I'm really enjoying what I've seen of this show so far.
Oh, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's such a kind of simple premise, but such a fun one. It kind of harks back to those kind of classic 80s and 90s action fillers, a sort of premise that would have a kind of Arnie or a Stallone sometimes in the lead. That kind of plane full of dangerous convicts crashes into the wilderness. Good luck. I just wondered if you were kind of inspired by kind of classic movies, and if that really played into the kind of the reference points when you were kind of creating this show.
I love that you pick up on that. Absolutely. I mean, this show for me and Rich, it's sort of it's a little bit of a love letter to the 90s summer blockbuster action movie type thing that would bring everyone together, right? Where you go out, you go to the theater, you see something that's fun, maybe a little heightened, maybe a little wild, but is a total ride, right? And you got to put your chin strap on and just go on the ride and go where it takes you. So yes, that was absolutely, our inspiration was very much, whether it's, it's a little bit Con Air, it's a little bit The Fugitive, it's a little bit The Rock, it's a little bit any of those movies that sort of take a heightened concept, but we tried to ground it as much as we can. And I do think that we had the good thing about having 10 episodes on Apple TV Plus is that we have the time to unpack some character stories that a lot of those old 90s movies didn't really have the time to do in a 90-minute movie. Right. So I think that's what hopefully is unexpected to people, is that we get to dive in and sort of sit with these characters in ways we might not expect.
Yeah, is that one of the kind of fascinating developments now, especially as a creative such as yourself, in the kind of modern era of storytelling, is that you've got cinematic stories, but now fleshed out over multiple episodes in a way that we've never really seen before?
It is different, right? I think it is unusual. And to me, I mean, look, the character stuff I think is all ultimately the only thing that matters, and the thing that everyone remembers probably are the characters. But I will admit it's difficult for me. That isn't my instinct where I go first, right? I go toward a concept or a fun sequence or something that's strange or peculiar that makes me smile, and then. But I think you do have to sort of sit with those characters and really. That's what guides you, right? I mean, that is the guiding light within the storytelling. I do sometimes think that in streaming, I think sometimes, for me, perhaps I just have a short attention span. Sometimes those stories become a little luxurious, and I'm looking for things to move forward, and I'm looking for some more turns, and so that might be why what we're doing here is potentially a little bit aggressive in terms of the turns and the pace and the frenetic aspect of it. I tend to love that kind of thing.
And you sort of mentioned obviously the strength of the kind of characters, and also what requires to bring them to life in such magnificent fashion is a great ensemble, which you've got here. Yeah. I was just doing an interview earlier today with Neil Cross, who of course created Luther, and I'm talking to him about his latest project. And he spoke about how good casting and good actors can change a writer's own initial perceptions of their own creations. Is that the case for you too as a writer?
Absolutely. I think that's totally spot on. I think it is 100% a collaboration to begin with, right? I mean, and so whatever you put on the page, somebody's going to come in and breathe life into that and say, this isn't really the way I would do that. Or they play it, even if it's just a line, a line that I might think is somebody's yelling, get down, might just be super emotional and quiet and soft. And so that is where I think it gets really interesting, is where you start not only working with, but trusting and leaning into that collaboration, because the actors and everyone around them wants the work to be as good as it can. And that's where therein lies the fun.
Just my final question. I read that in very early discussions, there was talk of this kind of being set in New York, which I just can't imagine. I just wanted to know just how different a show would that have been, and just how much does that show of how impactful a setting can be on a story?
Well, it is funny you bring that up. Yes, the original idea, which Rich DeVideo and I talked about this in 2006, right? So this is before this is before the iPhone, right? And people were still on flip phones. The idea was originally like, what would happen if a prison transport plane crashed, in New York City, and you shut down the bridges and the tunnels and said, okay, we have 3 days to find everyone in the middle of a hot, sweaty summer, Labor Day or something like that. And inevitably over time, just in thinking about it, the aspect of nature, of the wild, of what these inmates would mean reflected upon a very small community in a small town what it does to that town, what it does to the person who's in charge, of our manhunt. Those all became so much more interesting questions to me, and the environment, and it just felt, I don't know. I live in Nebraska. I'm from a very small town, and I sort of understand probably a rural point of view better than I do maybe one that would take place in Manhattan. So the story shifted, but it is a good example of just how dramatically things pivot, and the original inspiration oftentimes is the thing you have to go, all right, let's forget about that. Let's follow this where it's taking us. And this is where we end up, the middle of nowhere, Alaska.
Yeah, well, I love the setting. I love the show. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you.
Best luck with the release of the series.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!